This is Karen. This is Karen with Karen's Cards and More. And today I want to feature another card using the Pansy Patch stamp set. Another take on how you can do like a climbing pansy look. This is the card, and there's a video that I did for this card going up the side here and coming up with this look. But I wanted to show you that you can also make a beautiful border, create your own border, and emboss your sentiment in the middle for a really snazzy dressed up card. So this is what we're going to make today, and I'm going to show you how to do this. And it's very similar to the other video. So if you watch that, you'll pick up how to do the pansies really well. But I want to show you how I did the create my own border look. Okay, so let's look at what we need as far as the cardstock. I started with a piece of basic white that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. And then a piece of Misty Moonlight, and this is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. Then a piece of basic white that is 5 1/4 by 4. And then 2 little strips of the silver foil cardstock that are 5 1/4 by 1/4 inch. Okay, now let's start with the stamping. And there's a lot of different ways you could do this. You could tape this down and then proceed with what I'm going to show you. You could, there's just a lot of different ways you could do this. But I wanted something that would really help me hold down my cardstock and my piece that I was going to use to make the border. So let me show you what I figured out to do. This is my Stamparatus, and all I did, the plastic lid piece just goes in here like this, and I just pulled it out because I don't need that. I'm not going to use that for my stamping. This is the extra foam grid that you can purchase for your Stamparatus. Definitely, if you have the Stamparatus, you'll want to have this. This is just amazing and has helped me a lot. So a good thing to purchase. So then I can use these lines to put my piece of cardstock on here. And I'm just going to make sure that it's even. Then I cut a piece of, this is just copy paper. You could use junk mail. You could use, if you had a piece of something, you want something thin, you don't want something thick. This is something that had even had printing on the other side, and I just cut this to be 1/4 inch, 1 3/4 is the height of it, or the width of it. The length doesn't matter, you just want it to be longer than your card. And so because the ends are straight, I can butt this up against the edge of my Stamparatus, and that can help me line that up. So I'm just using one of these other lines to figure out where I want my midsection to be. And I'm going to make sure this is lined up. And you can put this however you want as far as in relationship to your card, where you want your border. If you want it closer to the top, closer to the bottom, right in the middle, you can just play with it and see where you want it. And I like it right there. And then I'm going to use my magnets to hold it down. That keeps everything in place. This was the best way I found, or let me say it was a really easy way that I found to be able to hold everything in place. If you just tape down, you can see where I originally tried it, and I just did it on my work surface, and I used the purple tape to tape it down, but the cardstock kept moving. So then I had to tape the cardstock down, where by doing this, it holds everything in place for me. Okay, so let's look at the colors of ink pads that we're going to be using. So for the leaves, I'm going to be using the Evening Evergreen, and the soft succulent. Those are both new in colors. And then for the pansy itself, I'm going to be using Balmy Blue, Misty Moonlight, and for the center, Daffodil Delight. So the first thing that I want to do is get all these opened up. And I'm going to put the ones I'm using for the pansy on one side and the ones I'm going to be using for the leaf on the other side, just for ease of stamping. And you're going to want to have some kind of either, you're going to want a die cut. Let me show you. Here's the stamp set that I'm going to be using, Pansy Patch. And there's a coordinating pansy dies that you can get. And I used this die here, the smaller pansy. And I used this leaf shape here. There's one that's a little shorter and wider. I used the taller, thinner one. And I cut 2 of each. And you want to cut that out of either masking paper or a Post-it note, something that you can use as a mask, because you'll need that for this process. We're going to be using this solid, smaller pansy, the detailed, smaller pansy. We're going to use the center detail, and then this little triangle here is the actual center of the pansy. And then for the leaf, we're going to use this solid here and then the detail here. And I've got all those on blocks ready to go. So let's look at how I did this. You can start however you want. I usually like to start in the middle, just because that's where your eye is usually drawn. You want to draw the eye to. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to show you how to do a few of these, and then I'm going to speed the video up so you don't have to watch me stamp this whole border at the top and the bottom, because it's just repeating the same process over and over. So let's start with a pansy, and I have the solid small pansy, and I'm going to ink that in the Balmy Blue. And I'm just going to, I'm going to move my ink pads over just a little, and I'm just going to stamp this. Just stamp that down right there. And then I'm going to come in with the detail, and I'm using the Misty Moonlight. And I'm just going to line that up. And this really is a pretty easy stamp to line up. And then with the Misty Moonlight, I'm also going to do the little detail stamp. Now, some of it's going to stamp on the paper, and that's what you want because you're creating this border. Now, the little center, the little triangle center, I'm doing in the Daffodil Delight, and that's going to go right in the middle. Okay, now I can either add another flower, I can add a leaf, I can do whatever. So I'm going to add a leaf on one side, and you will see that my masking pieces, I used them for the sample card, and I'm just going to use them again. And wherever you're going to stamp your second image, you want to put this in you want a little bit of the flower that you already stamped to show. If you put it right on the edge, what's going to happen is you're going to have a gap between your images, and you don't want that. So you want to have a little bit of that showing. Okay, so let me get my greens opened up. And we're going to start with the solid image that's soft succulent. And I just want a tip of the flower on there. And then I'm going to come in with the detail in the evergreen. And if your magnet's in the way of getting a good image, just scoot it over. And that'll give you room. Depending on your block size, you may need to do that. Okay, so there's my flower and my leaf. And I have that there. Now, I want to do, I'm going to do another flower on this side. So I'm going to just adjust this, and I want a little bit like that. And again, I'm going to come in with the solid in the Balmy Blue. And make sure I got that inked up. And I'm just going to put that down there. And then I'm going to come in with the detail in the misty moonlight. Put my detail down. Again with the little, it looks like a bearded thing to me, but it's the detailed centerpiece. And then with our little triangle, yellow triangle in the middle. Just like that. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in another mask. And I'm going to put this in again. I'm going to leave a little bit of the blue showing. And I'm going to move this mask and you want to be careful because these have wet ink on them. You want to be careful with your fingers that you don't transfer wet ink to your card piece. I did that a couple times and had to completely start over. So I'm going to do another leaf. So I'm going to come in with the solid, with the soft succulent, and I'm just going to go like that. And I'm just having the tips show. You could do this however you wanted, but I just like having the tips show. Just like that. Okay. And then let's see, which way do I want to go from here? I'm going to pull this one up for now. And I'm going to come in with a leaf and cover that just to make sure I don't mess up my leaf. And I want to move this pansy a little bit because I want to do another flower. So I'm going to put that there. And I'm going to come up this way. And see how those stuck to the stamp? That's okay, you can just pull them off and you can put them right back down. Just line them up on that and just put them right back down, no problem. Okay, and I'm going to stamp my detail over that. Like that. Now it's hard to see how beautiful this is going to turn out until you get done, because at some points it just looks like a mess because you got all this going on. But when we get done and we pull this paper up, we'll see how pretty it turns out. So I'm going to move this off. And usually what I do is I go back and forth between my masks so that the ink on the one can dry while I'm using the next one. So I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to come in with my leaf. I'm going to add another leaf. And I did that in the wrong color, but that's okay. We'll just come in with the detail. Leaves can be different colors. Just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and clean off that leaf stamp so I can do it in the soft succulent for the rest of my leaves. But that's okay, you know, I have a tree that has 3 different kind of leaves on it, so that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to bring in my leaf again. Always make sure you offset it. That's why you have to move your mask each time, because you have to have that little bit showing, or else you're going to end up with a big space that you're not going to like. And the other nice thing about using the Stamparatus is I can go off the edge and it's okay, because this will just wipe right clean and not have a problem. So that was the other thing I liked about doing it this way. I'm just going to line that up. Keeping track of all my stamps. That's the hardest part. And we're going to put the center in. There we go. Okay, I'm going to move these masks so I can see what I got going on here. And I want to put this leaf over here. And I'm going to put this on the edge over here just because I'm not sure yet where I want to stamp. So I want to have that covered. Okay. And I'm going to come in with I'm going to do another pansy. And I'm just going to keep doing this till I have the whole thing covered. Just switching between the pansies and the leaves. Now we're ready just to turn it. And I'm going to keep my finger on the paper so the paper doesn't shift. And I'm just going to move my magnets around so I can stamp on the other side. And I'm going to be careful not to get them in the ink. And we're just going to stamp along the other border. We're just going to repeat the same process that we've been doing with the stamping and masking until we get this side done. So I'm going to speed up through this so that you don't have to watch me in real time do all this, and then we'll come back together and finish up the card. Okay, there we're done with our pansies. Let me go ahead and close up my ink pads and get these out of the way. Okay, so now we can take a look at what we've got. I'm going to move all this off. I'm going to set this out of the way because we're done with that for now. And here's our card. And we've got a built-in border there in the center. Now, I want to show you a couple things. Right here at the top, you can see where I got ink smudges. You can cover that up with embellishments, or if you have one of these mono sand erasers, I tell you what, this has saved me so many times because you can just erase that ink right off and not feel like your whole card is ruined. Now sometimes the bigger, darker spots are a little harder to get off, but I think I can lighten this enough to where we didn't ruin the card. There we go. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our middle and we're going to emboss it. So I'm going to be using silver embossing powder for this. So I want to use my embossing buddy and go through the center so that we can get a good embossed image on here. And I'm using the Ornate Thanks stamp set. Let me show you that. There was two stamps when they brought out the Ornate Gardens. There was the Ornate Thanks, and then the other that had the images. This is just all different types of thank you, and I'm using this big thank you for the center of my card, okay? So I'm going to ink this up, and because this is a bigger stamp, and I'm going to straighten this on my block, just because that'll make it easier to get it straight on the card. And one thing you can do with the polymer, lay it down like you're going to stamp it and then put the block on top of it. And a lot of times that'll get it straighter for you. I really shouldn't have done that on my card, but, and with this one, it's easier for me to ink turn it over and ink it like this. And I'm just going across it with the Versamark. And because this is a polymer, we want to put a foam piece underneath when we stamp. And here's the foam pad that comes with the Stamparatus, so I'm just going to use that. And then we're just going to stamp this right in the center. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my silver embossing powder. I've got a scratch piece of paper here that I'm going to use just to collect my embossing powder so I can put it back in the jar. I'm going to just sprinkle that on there. And get the excess off. Now, sometimes you'll get a little bit of powder where you don't want it. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. Because you can clean up your what you have before you heat set it. So you can see, and I usually use a small brush, but I'm using my Take Your Pick tool, and I'm just going to loosen this powder that's up above this that I don't want. And then I can just shake it off like that. And I'm not hurting the image, I'm just getting that excess off. Okay, now it's ready to do our embossing. I have a little bit in here that I want to get off. Okay, we're ready to emboss. Okay, and you just want to emboss long enough to have the powder turn that glossy look, okay? Now we're ready to start putting our card together. So let me get all of our pieces that we need. Need our strips. Okay. I went and got some more something on the edge there, so I'm going to erase that off. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put our strips for our border to cover the line and just to dress it up a little bit. And they're going to go just like that. So for these, because they're so thin, and I'm going to bring in, I have a silicone mat here, and I want to do my gluing on the mat so that I don't get it on my work surface, okay? And I'm using the Tombow liquid glue for this. And I'm just going to put some glue on the back of my strip that I cut. Just like that. Oh. And I'm just going to line it up on the edge. And I want to make sure that it's high enough that it covers any of the imperfections that might be there from where we created our border. And because it's the liquid glue, you have a little bit of time to move it if it's not straight. I think that's pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to do the other strip. then just do the same thing. I'm going to put some liquid glue down the strip. And I'm going to cover the other end of the... You could definitely make this space, this middle space smaller if you wanted. However you want to do it. Okay, just like that. And then I'm done with the liquid glue. So then I just use my Stampin' Seal. And because of the measurements that I used for the pieces, the Misty Moonlight is just going to create a real thin border around this just to give it some color. So you want to keep that in mind when you're lining it up, that it's just a thin border. Okay. And then we're just going to do the same thing on the back of this. Put some Stampin' Seal. And we're going to attach this to the front of our card. Again, it's just a real thin border of the white around the blue. I'm going to press that down and fold it. And there you have it. You created your own unique border using one of your floral stamp sets. And if you're like me, you have lots of different stamp sets to choose from, and you can create your own look. You can use different stamp sets, make different looks, and have your own unique border instead of a stamped border. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you will try this masking technique with these pansies. If you haven't watched the other video, go back and check that out. If you do not have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to help you out. You can shop at my website, my online store, karensmith.stampinup.net. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button. The notification bell will tell you every time I upload a new video. And I will craft with you again soon.